Hey everyone, it's Michael. Of course, this weekend we had the It Chapter 2 film come out in theaters. I don't plan on probably seeing it in theaters, so I'll probably wait off and try to watch it on DVD or something. I'm not the biggest fan of the remakes of It and It Chapter 2 or whatever, and maybe at some point I'll try to sit down and rewatch them. I've only seen the first film a couple of times. I'm a huge fan of the miniseries, and I am also a huge fan of what this video is going to be about. This is a video called Things Like Goosebumps, It, the book by Stephen King. This book has a lot to offer. It's not my favorite book ever. It's one of Stephen King's best books, I would easily say. Huge book, 1,100 pages long in this copy. This is actually my copy that I read in high school. I did not use this time when I reread the book. I actually reread the book and finished it probably a couple of months ago because I wanted to reread it because the new film was coming out, and I thought I would see it and make a whole channel focused around on the side, but I ended up not doing that. But I'm a big fan of the book. I think it has a lot of amazing things to it, a lot of amazing characteristics. One of my biggest problems that's always prevalent with Stephen King, there is too much writing. There's too much. It needs to be edited down. This does not deserve to be 1,100 pages long, but very few things do I think you could cut out of it in general. Just a lot of the internal monologue type stuff, a lot of the thought process, because Stephen King writes more characters than he does plot a lot of the time. A lot of the time you're just hearing the whole history of somebody's life, and it doesn't really intrigue me all that much. So I do skim a lot, and I did skim a lot throughout this book. So that's an issue that I do take into account when I do my ratings and whatnot, but for the most part, when I read the book the first time ever back in high school, about 10 years ago, I read every word. I read every word of the book, and I adored it then, and I still adore it now. I just don't love it as much as I did back then. I've read a lot more books since then. Over the years, off and on, I've read a lot more, but still, I'm not obsessed with the book like I used to be. I used to think it was easily his best book, or at least in his top 3, and I don't feel that way anymore. I think it's a really great book, really surprisingly experimental with the way it's told, and I'll get more into that as the review goes along. But I highly recommend the book if you haven't checked it out. Again, this is an adult horror book. It has a lot of suggestive things in there, a lot of violent gore and insanity to it. This is not meant for people who are the Goosebumps age, like the middle school kids that read and watch my videos and stuff, who read Goosebumps and everything else. I love you guys. I don't entirely recommend this book to you, though. I think this is more for people my age, you know, the older folks that have kind of grown up on Goosebumps and Twilight Zone and all these things. One of the biggest veins that run through Stephen King's work is H.P. Lovecraft. That's a giant influence on Stephen King for anybody who doesn't know that. This book is easily, heavily influenced by H.P. Lovecraft, and in a good way. In a good way, I would say. There's one giant controversial moment in this book that I hate, and I wish it was cut out. It's awful. But everything else about the book, event-wise, I love. I genuinely love. I love the structure of the book, and we'll get more into that in a moment, too. So for anybody who doesn't know the plot of Stephen King's It, essentially, like I said, this very long book is focused on a lot of different things. It goes back and forth. Instead of being 2 books that would be a sequel or a series or even a trilogy, if you would, it's one big book focusing on kids back in the 1950s trying to get rid of a giant clown monster thing. It's not really a giant, but it's just like a clown monster thing that can shapeshift and everything possibly. And they're trying to get rid of this ultimate evil that for some reason has infested their entire town called Derry, Maine. A bunch of kids are going missing. One of the main characters, the main character in my opinion, Bill, who ends up growing up into a writer and stuff, his little brother, Georgie, gets murdered brutally. It's like the first 5 pages of the book, and it's horrific. It's one of the horrifying, probably one of the most horrifying things I've ever read in a book in my life. Probably one of the most horrifying things I've ever read ever in anything. And for some reason, the neighbors don't get involved with the situation. And just the whole thing involving Georgie, it's just heart-wrenching. It is just totally upsetting how he's out in this rainstorm, his little paper boat. You know, everybody knows the story. Everybody that was a kid in the 90s were terrified of the original Tim Curry miniseries, and the book makes it worse. The book makes it even more horrific, even though I love the miniseries more than I love the book, which might sound like blasphemy, but that's how I feel about it. I love the Tim Curry performance of Pennywise the Dancing Clown. By the way, that's the name of the clown that's down in the sewers that kills Georgie. There's a lot of child murder in this, which might scare a lot of my viewers who are younger folks and stuff. But I feel like this would be a good advantage to talk about this book, and maybe the miniseries and the remakes and all that stuff here on my channel, because it does heavily involve children. But what I was going to say also, the book doesn't just focus on when they go after the monster when they're kids, when all of these kids slowly become friends over time. They become a group called the Losers Club, and they go after this clown down in the sewers. But we also cut back and forth between them as adults 27 years later. They've all grown up, they've all become famous and rich, pretty much. They've all moved away and went to scattered different areas throughout the world. Some of them are like famous clothing line workers. Bill, the main character, ends up becoming a famous novelist and writer. He works on a film adaptation of his books, kind of like Stephen King, because Stephen King always has to have writers, you know, in his stories, almost always. Ben Hanscom, my personal favorite character, who John Ritter played in the original movie, miniseries, whatever, with Tim Curry. Love John Ritter. Three's Company is one of my favorite shows of all time. I was so excited to see him in the miniseries when I saw it for one of the first times I ever actually watched it, that I wasn't petrified by it. This book actually helped me in a lot of ways to overcome my fear of Tim Curry's Pennywise performance, because this book really makes you kind of face your fears, if you will. There's a lot of focus on the characters all having different versions of Pennywise in their head. He might be a giant bird to one of them. He might be a leopard, you know, or a leper, excuse me, not a leopard like the cheetah type thing, but a leper like with the sickness and the illness and stuff that happens in the Middle East. The book is scary. It has some really genuinely scary moments. There's a lot of character stuff, like I said, that really is effective, especially with the young girl Beverly. There is the one controversial scene amongst the kids that I hate, and I wish it was not in the book. I don't know how Stephen King didn't get in trouble for that, but it's disgusting and vile, and I hate it. Everybody probably knows what I'm talking about too, but I'm not going to spoil it in case you guys haven't read the book, or in case you're too young to know what happens there, and I don't want to talk about it here on my channel because it's gross and sick. But anyway, we follow the kids also when they become adults, and kind of Stephen King intercuts back and forth between when the kids are kids and now when they're adults. And I love that. It's so experimental, like I said, and it works so well. It works so well the way he told this story. I think he worked for like 4 years on this novel, and it's incredible. All of the effort shows, and this is going to go down in history as one of the creepiest, one of the most bizarre and long horror stories that's ever been written, and it's so good. It is such a great read. One of my favorite portions of the book are Richie Tozier, who is basically the comedian of the group. He grows up to be a comedian, by the way. And Richie, a lot of the fears that he feels have to do with like these 50 type of horror movies, like 1950s type stuff. Like, I don't know, like mummy movies, werewolf movies and stuff, werewolf movies where they wear like Letterman jackets, you know, stuff like that. That's my genre. That is the stuff that I love. Black and white horror movies and sci-fi films from like the 50s and stuff, that's up my alley. So there's all that kind of stuff that I love to death that's in this book. This book is so heavily influenced by so many different things from horror, but mainly H.P. Lovecraft, like I said. That's a big vein in here, and it gets a little bit too big for its britches, honestly. I don't like the cosmic aspect of the book, and I won't spoil too much of what I mean by that, but the more and more that we delve into what Pennywise the Dancing Clown is as a creature or a monster, because he's not just more, he's much more than just a clown, the more I dislike that creature. It's kind of a cool idea, but I don't like the execution, if that makes sense. I don't like the other being that's also tied in with Pennywise. The book is kind of messy in some regards there, and again, the finale I actually love. I think especially the portion that's in the adults, their finale of the story, I love. I think it is so gut-wrenching and sad and emotional, and you become so attached to these characters by the time if you finish reading this book. There's no way you couldn't be affected deep down in your gut by how incredible this book is. It is just a fantastic read. Everything about it's fantastic. Again, a lot of overwriting. That's very common with Stephen King in general. I have many, many, many complaints about that at my channel when I talk about Stephen King in general with his history of books. But for the most part, most things in here matter. Most things in here are very entertaining. Most things are really good. Another character that I love is Mike. I adore him. I pretty much love all the main characters. Beverly, Eddie, Stan. Stan's probably my least favorite out of all of them. There's certain reasons for that I can't tell you because they're spoilers to the story. Bill, Ben Hanscom's my favorite. I love Mike. The bullies that bully all of these kids all the time, like, for example, you have Henry Bowers, who is just a mean kid, and he's so mean to Ben. I love Ben so much, and that kid is so mean. They casted him amazingly in the miniseries with Tim Curry, but I'll get there when I do a video on that, God willing. But man, great book. Really great book for the most part. I have my complaints, but I'm telling you, this is good, but it's not for kids. Again, I don't recommend this book for younger viewers. I recommend this for people who are teenagers and young adults and adults like myself. You are the audience for this book, not a young middle schooler type kid who's into Goosebumps and into Harry Potter and all that stuff, even though Harry Potter gets pretty tense. But anyway, what are your thoughts, guys? Put your thoughts and comments down in the comment section down below. I would love to hear what you have to say about this book, about the miniseries, about the 2 movie remake, reboots, whatever you want to call them. Did you see It Chapter 2 this weekend? Again, it's going to be a while till I probably see It Chapter 2. I might go ahead and do a review on Part 1, the 2017, 16, whatever it was, remake. I don't know. But anyway, what are your thoughts? Put them down below. Thank you guys for watching, and may the Lord Jesus Christ bless you guys today. Oh, by the way, my rating for this. If I had to rate this book on a 5-star basis, I would give it a 4 out of 5. It's a very high 4 out of 5. The only reason I don't give it a perfect 5 out of 5 is because of those complaints that I think matter. You know, like the overriding, the very controversial moment that I think shouldn't be in the book at all. But that's about it. I really love the book. I have a lot of appreciation for it. I have like 5 copies of this book floating around my house, all different covers. I don't know why, I just do. I don't know. But anyway, thank you guys for watching. May the Lord Jesus Christ bless you guys today. And goodbye.